The rain drummed against the floor-to-ceiling windows of Ethan Sterling's corner office, on the 42nd floor, creating a rhythm that matched his growing frustration. At 32, he had built Sterling Enterprises into one of New York's most successful technology companies, but today, all of that seemed to be slipping through his fingers like sand. His assistant, Catherine, knocked softly before entering with yet another stack of newspapers and printed articles. "Sir, the morning headlines are, well, they're not good." Ethan didn't look up from his laptop screen, where the stock prices continued their downward spiral. "Read them to me." Sterling CEO caught in scandalous affair with married board member's wife, Catherine began hesitantly. Tech mogul's reckless behavior threatens company future. Sterling Enterprises stock plummets as investors lose confidence in leadership. Ethan finally raised his eyes, running a hand through his dark hair. The irony wasn't lost on him. The scandalous affair had been nothing more than a business dinner that the tabloids had twisted into something salacious. Victoria Blackwood, the wife of board member Harrison Blackwood, had been photographed leaving the same restaurant, as Ethan and the media had created an entire narrative around two completely separate dinner meetings. "The board meeting is in 3 hours," Catherine continued gently. "Mr. Blackwood is calling for your resignation." Ethan stood and walked to the window, watching the city below. He had worked 18-hour days for the past decade, sacrificing personal relationships and happiness to build his empire. Now, because of a misunderstanding and media manipulation, everything was crumbling. "There has to be a way to fix this," he murmured. Catherine cleared her throat. "Actually, sir, there might be. My cousin works in public relations, and she mentioned that sometimes a strategic marriage can completely shift public perception, show stability, maturity, commitment to family values." Ethan turned around, intrigued despite himself. "A marriage of convenience? It's worked for other public figures facing similar crises. Find the right person, someone who would benefit from the arrangement as well, and create a partnership that serves both parties." As Catherine left, Ethan found himself considering the idea seriously. He needed someone respectable, intelligent, and willing to enter into a business arrangement disguised as romance. Someone who needed something he could provide in return. That afternoon, while reviewing potential PR strategies with his team, Ethan's lawyer, David Chen, mentioned a case he was working on. "It's heartbreaking, really. This young woman, Dr. Naomi Williams, is about to lose her community clinic in Brooklyn. She's been serving underprivileged families for 3 years, but she can't keep up with the mounting debt and legal fees. She's brilliant. Graduated top of her class from Columbia Medical School, but she chose community service over lucrative private practice." Ethan found himself asking for more details. Dr. Williams had apparently taken over the clinic from a retiring physician, but inherited massive debts along with it. She was facing foreclosure within 60 days and had exhausted all traditional funding options. "What kind of debt are we talking about?" Ethan asked. "About $2 million. Substantial for someone in her position, but pocket change for someone like you." An idea began forming in Ethan's mind. He asked David to arrange a meeting. "Welcome back, dear viewers. If you enjoy emotional journeys about love that grows from the most surprising beginnings, filled with heart-stopping twists and lessons about finding your true self, make sure you subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss the next story." The Sunshine Community Health Clinic sat wedged between a bodega and a laundromat in the heart of Brooklyn, its modest storefront belying the vital service it provided to the neighborhood. Ethan Sterling felt oddly out of place in his $1,000 suit as he pushed through the front door, the little bell announcing his arrival. The waiting room was filled with families, mothers holding babies, elderly patients reading, worn magazines, children playing quietly in a corner designated with colorful toys. The atmosphere was warm despite the clinic's obvious financial struggles. Motivational posters in both English and Spanish adorned the walls, and someone had painted a beautiful mural of a sunrise over the reception desk. "Can I help you?" asked the receptionist, a middle-aged Latina woman who looked at Ethan with curious but friendly eyes. "I'm here to see Dr. Williams, Ethan Sterling." Before the receptionist could respond, a door opened, and out stepped the most captivating woman Ethan had ever seen. Dr. Naomi Williams was not what he had expected. She was tall and graceful, with natural hair pulled back in a professional bun, warm brown skin that seemed to glow despite the fluorescent lighting, and intelligent dark eyes that assessed him quickly but thoroughly. She wore a white coat over simple navy scrubs, and there was something about her presence that commanded respect, a quiet confidence that spoke of someone who had overcome challenges and emerged stronger. "Mr. Sterling," she said, extending her hand with a firm handshake, "I have to admit, I'm curious about why one of New York's most prominent CEOs wants to meet with a small community clinic doctor." Her voice was melodious but professional, with just a hint of skepticism that Ethan found refreshing. Most people either fawned over his wealth or immediately became defensive around him. "Could we speak privately, Dr. Williams?" She led him to her small office, which was cramped but organized. Medical texts lined the shelves, and the desk was covered with patient files and what appeared to be financial documents. A small photo showed Naomi with an elderly couple, presumably her parents, at her medical school graduation. "I'll be direct, Dr. Williams," Ethan began. "I understand you're facing some financial difficulties with the clinic." Naomi's expression immediately became guarded. "If you're here to make some kind of buyout offer, Mr. Sterling, I should tell you that this clinic serves families who have nowhere else to go. I won't sell to someone who plans to shut it down or convert it into something else. That's not why I'm here," Ethan said quickly. "I'm here because I have a proposition that could solve both of our problems." He explained his situation carefully, the media scandal, the threat to his company, the board's lack of confidence. Naomi listened without interruption, her expression unreadable. "So you want to pay off my debts in exchange for marrying you and pretending to be happily in love?" She summarized when he finished. "It would be a business arrangement with clear boundaries and expectations. 2 years minimum, enough time for the scandal to fade and your clinic to get back on stable footing. After that, an amicable divorce where you keep the clinic debt-free and I provide a settlement that ensures you can expand your services." Naomi was quiet for a long moment, staring at the stack of overdue bills on her desk. "Mr. Sterling, do you know anything about me, about my background, my values, my life? I know you're an excellent doctor who's dedicated to serving others. I know you graduated at the top of your class, but chose community service over profit. I know you're facing an impossible situation through no fault of your own. What you don't know," Naomi said softly, "is that I grew up in foster care. I was bounced between homes from age 7 until I aged out of the system at 18. I've never had a real family, Mr. Sterling. The idea of marriage, even a fake one, isn't something I take lightly." Ethan felt an unexpected tug in his chest at her honesty. "I understand this is asking a lot, but I want you to know that I would respect any boundaries you set. This would be a partnership, nothing more." Naomi stood and walked to her window, which overlooked a small playground where children were playing despite the overcast day. "These families trust me, Mr. Sterling. They come here because they know I care about them, not because I'm trying to get rich or famous. If I agree to this arrangement and the media finds out it's fake, it won't just destroy your reputation. It'll destroy the trust I've built in this community, which is why we would have to make it absolutely convincing," Ethan replied. "To everyone, including our friends and family." She turned back to face him. "I need time to think about this." "Of course, but Dr. Williams, Naomi, I want you to know that if you agree to this, I will do everything in my power to ensure you never regret it. Your clinic's success would become my priority too." As Ethan left the clinic that day, he found himself thinking not just about his business problems, but about the woman who might solve them. There was something about Naomi Williams that intrigued him beyond their potential arrangement, a strength and grace that spoke to parts of himself he had long forgotten. Naomi spent 3 sleepless nights weighing Ethan's proposal. She walked through her neighborhood, past the families she served, thinking about what their lives would be like if the clinic closed. Mrs. Rodriguez, whose diabetes she managed with careful medication, adjustments because the woman couldn't afford an endocrinologist. Little Marcus, whose asthma attacks had decreased dramatically since. She'd been able to connect his family with proper housing assistance. The elderly Mr. Thompson, who came in weekly not just for his blood pressure, medication, but because she was often the only person he spoke to all week. On Thursday morning, she called the number Ethan had given her. "I have conditions," she said without preamble when he answered. "I'm listening. First, the clinic's mission doesn't change. Ever. If we do this, part of the arrangement is that you establish an endowment to ensure it can continue serving low-income families indefinitely, not just pay off current debts." Agreed. Second, I maintain complete professional autonomy. You don't interfere with my medical decisions or how I run the clinic. Of course. Third, we establish clear boundaries about what this relationship entails. I won't be your arm candy at parties or pretend to be someone I'm not. If we're going to convince people we're in love, it has to be based on genuine respect and partnership. Ethan was quiet for a moment. "Naomi, I want you to know that I would never ask you to be anything other than yourself. If anything, your authenticity is what makes this arrangement appealing. You're not someone who can be bought or changed, and that's exactly what I need right now. And fourth," Naomi continued, "when this ends, it ends cleanly. No drama, no attempts to extend the arrangement, no complications. Understood? Should I have my lawyer draw up a contract?" "Yes, but I want my own lawyer to review it." "And Mr. Sterling?" "Ethan, please. Ethan. I'm agreeing to this because I believe it can help both of us, but I want to be clear. I've never been married, never even been in a serious long-term relationship. I don't know how to be someone's wife, even a fake one." "Then we'll figure it out together," Ethan said, and there was something in his voice that made Naomi's heart skip unexpectedly. 2 weeks later, after lawyers had negotiated terms and media strategies had been planned, Naomi found herself standing in front of her bathroom mirror, preparing for her first public appearance as Ethan Sterling's fiancée. The story they had crafted was simple, but believable. They had met when Ethan had visited the clinic for a community service event several months ago, had been quietly dating ever since, and had decided to get engaged after realizing they shared the same values and vision for making a positive impact. Her phone buzzed with a text from Ethan. "Car is downstairs whenever you're ready. No pressure, but you're going to be amazing." The kindness in the message surprised her. Over the past 2 weeks, as they had met with lawyers and PR specialists, Ethan had been unfailingly respectful and considerate. He had asked about her preferences for the engagement ring. Simple, she had said, nothing ostentatious, had ensured she was comfortable with every aspect of their public story, and had even visited the clinic again to better understand her work. The evening's event was a charity gala for children's literacy, neutral territory where their first appearance together would support a good cause and allow them to ease into their public roles. When Naomi emerged from her building, she found Ethan waiting beside a modest sedan rather than the limousine she had expected. He was dressed in a classic black tuxedo, but his expression was warm and encouraging rather than formal. "You look beautiful," he said simply, and Naomi felt heat rise in her cheeks. She had chosen a deep emerald dress that was elegant but not overly flashy, and had left her hair in its natural curls, styled softly around her shoulders. "Thank you. You clean up pretty well yourself." During the drive to the hotel, they reviewed their story one more time. How they had met, when they had started dating, how he had proposed. During a quiet dinner at a small restaurant in her neighborhood, where he had told her she was the strongest person he had ever met and asked if she would build a life with him. "Remember," Ethan said as they approached the venue, "we don't have to overdo it. The best lies are mostly truth. We do respect each other, we are partners in this arrangement, and we do want to make a positive impact. Let that genuine foundation show through." The gala was held in the ballroom of the Plaza Hotel, with hundreds of New York's social elite in attendance. As they entered, Naomi felt the weight of curious stares and tried to channel the confidence that had gotten her through medical school and residency. Ethan placed his hand gently on the small of her back, a gesture that was both protective and possessive, and Naomi was surprised by how natural it felt. "Ethan," called a voice from across the room. A distinguished older woman approached with arms outstretched. "We've been wondering when you'd bring someone special to one of these events. Caroline, I'd like you to meet my fiancée, Dr. Naomi Williams. Naomi, this is Caroline Pemberton. She's on the board of the Literacy Foundation." As the evening progressed, Naomi found herself genuinely enjoying the conversations. She spoke passionately about the clinic's work, listened with interest as Ethan discussed his company's education initiatives, and was surprised by how naturally they seemed to complement each other in social situations. During dinner, as Ethan told a story about a programming error that had nearly crashed their entire system, Naomi found herself laughing genuinely at his self-deprecating humor. When she shared an anecdote about a patient who had brought her homemade cookies as payment for a visit, Ethan's attention was completely focused on her, his eyes warm with what looked like genuine affection. "You two seem very comfortable together," observed their table companion, an art gallery owner named Patricia. "Naomi makes everything easier," Ethan replied, reaching over to squeeze her hand. "She sees the world in ways that constantly surprise me." Later, as they danced to a soft jazz number, Naomi found herself relaxing into Ethan's arms. He was a good dancer, confident but not dominating, and being close to him felt surprisingly comfortable. "How do you think we're doing?" she murmured near his ear. "I think," Ethan said softly, "that anyone watching us would believe we're genuinely happy together. Because in this moment, I actually am." The honesty in his voice caught Naomi off guard, and she looked up to find him gazing at her with an intensity that made her breath catch. For just a moment, the careful boundaries of their arrangement seemed to blur, and she found herself wondering what it would be like if this were real. 3 months into their engagement, Naomi and Ethan had settled into a routine that surprised them both with its comfort. Ethan had moved into a spacious apartment in Brooklyn Heights, a compromise between his Manhattan lifestyle and her commitment to staying close to her clinic. The apartment had stunning views of the harbor and enough space for both of them to maintain their privacy while still appearing to live as a couple. Naomi had been touched when Ethan insisted she choose the decor. "This is your home too," he had said. "I want you to feel comfortable here." She had selected warm, earthy tones and comfortable furniture, creating a space that felt more like a home than the stark modern aesthetic of his previous penthouse. Their public appearances had become more natural, and the media coverage had shifted dramatically. Instead of scandal and speculation, the headlines now read, "Sterling CEO's community-minded fiancé brings heart to corporate world and power couples' shared commitment to social change." What surprised Naomi most was how much she had come to enjoy Ethan's company. Away from the public eye, he was thoughtful and funny, with a dry wit that caught her off guard. He was genuinely interested in her work, often asking detailed questions about her patients and the challenges of running a community clinic. One evening, as they prepared dinner together in their shared kitchen, Ethan was unusually quiet. "Everything okay?" Naomi asked, looking up from the vegetables she was chopping. "The board meeting went well today," he said. "Confidence is fully restored. Stock prices are higher than they were before the scandal. From a business perspective, our arrangement has been an unqualified success." Naomi felt an unexpected pang at his words. "That's good news, right?" "It is," Ethan agreed, but his tone suggested something was troubling him. "It's just, when we started this, it felt like playing a role. Lately, it feels less like acting." Naomi set down her knife, her heart beginning to race. "What do you mean?" Ethan turned to face her, his expression serious. "I mean that when I introduce you as my fiancé, it doesn't feel like a lie anymore. When we're at events together and you laugh at something I've said, or when you defend your patients with such passion that your eyes light up. I find myself forgetting this is supposed to be temporary." The kitchen fell silent except for the soft bubbling of the pasta sauce on the stove. Naomi felt a warmth spreading through her chest that had nothing to do with the cooking heat. "Ethan," she said softly, "we agreed on boundaries." "I know we did, and I'll respect them completely. I just needed you to know that what I feel for you has become very real." Before Naomi could respond, Ethan's phone rang. The caller ID showed his assistant's number, and his expression immediately shifted to concern. "Catherine never calls this late unless it's urgent." The conversation was brief, but Naomi could see Ethan's face growing tense. When he hung up, he ran a hand through his hair. A gesture she had learned meant he was deeply worried. "What is it?" she asked. "There's been an accident at one of our manufacturing facilities in Ohio. 3 workers are injured, 1 seriously. I need to fly out tonight to handle the situation personally." Without hesitation, Naomi began turning off the stove burners. "I'll pack a bag." Ethan looked at her in surprise. "Naomi, you don't have to. If you're going to be dealing with injured workers, you might want a doctor there. Besides," she added with a small smile, "what kind of supportive fiancé would I be if I let you handle a crisis alone?" 4 hours later, they were on Ethan's private jet, flying through the night toward Columbus. Naomi had arranged for her colleague Dr. Martinez to cover the clinic for a few days, and Ethan had briefed her on the situation. An equipment malfunction had caused a small explosion in the facility, and while no one had been killed, the injuries were serious enough to require careful medical attention. As they landed in Columbus, Naomi was struck by Ethan's immediate transformation. Gone was the relaxed man who had been cooking dinner with her just hours earlier. In his place was a focused CEO, coordinating with local emergency services, insurance representatives, and facility managers. But she also saw something else, genuine concern for his employees' welfare that went beyond legal liability. At the hospital, Ethan insisted on speaking with each injured worker personally. Naomi watched as he sat beside their beds, asking about their families, ensuring they understood that all medical costs would be covered, and promising that they would be taken care of during their recovery. "Mr. Sterling," said one of the workers, a man named James who had suffered burns on his arms. "I've been with the company for 8 years, and I've never seen a CEO actually show up at the hospital before." "Your safety is my responsibility, James," Ethan replied simply. "I should have been here sooner." Later, as they checked into a hotel near the hospital, Naomi found herself seeing Ethan in a completely new light. "You really care about them," she said, as they rode the elevator to their floor. "They're not just employees," Ethan replied. "They're people with families, dreams, responsibilities. When I started the company, I promised myself I would never forget that success means nothing if people get hurt along the way." They had booked adjoining rooms, maintaining their careful boundaries, even while traveling together. But as Naomi settled into her room, she found herself thinking about the man in the next room, not the successful CEO or her convenient fiancé, but the person who had sat by a worker's bedside at midnight, holding the man's wife's hand while she cried. A soft knock on the connecting door interrupted her thoughts. She opened it to find Ethan still fully dressed, despite the late hour. "I wanted to thank you," he said, "for coming with me. Having you here, it helped. You have a way of putting people at ease that I've never been able to master." "Ethan," Naomi said, stepping closer to the doorway, "what you did tonight, how you handled everything, that's who you really are, isn't it? Not the cold CEO the media made you out to be." He met her eyes, and she saw vulnerability there that he usually kept hidden. "Maybe that's why I need you, Naomi. You see the person I want to be, not just the person I've had to become." The moment stretched between them, filled with unspoken possibilities. Naomi felt her carefully constructed walls beginning to crumble, replaced by something deeper and more dangerous than their business arrangement had ever contemplated. "We should get some rest," she said finally, though her voice was barely above a whisper. "Yes," Ethan agreed, but he didn't move away from the doorway. "Naomi?" "Yes? Thank you for seeing me. The real me." As she closed the connecting door, Naomi leaned against it, her heart racing. Everything was becoming more complicated, but she was beginning to realize that complications weren't always a bad thing. 6 months into their engagement, Naomi and Ethan had fallen into a rhythm that felt surprisingly natural. Their public appearances were seamless, their living arrangement comfortable, and their friendship genuine. But underneath the surface, both were struggling with feelings that threatened to complicate their carefully structured arrangement. "My mother wants to meet you," Ethan announced one evening as they shared takeout Chinese food in their living room. She's flying in from Seattle this weekend. Naomi nearly choked on her lo mein. Your mother? Ethan, we've never talked about family. I don't know anything about her, and she doesn't know anything about me. I know, and I'm sorry. I've been avoiding it because... He paused, setting down his chopsticks. Because my relationship with my parents is complicated, and I didn't want to expose you to that dysfunction. Tell me about them. Ethan was quiet for a long moment. My father built Sterling Enterprises from nothing, but he was never around when I was growing up. My mother, Eleanor, tried to fill that void by being overly involved in every aspect of my life. She has very specific ideas about who I should marry, what kind of life I should lead, and how I should run the company. What kind of specific ideas? The kind that involve social standing, family background, and... Ethan hesitated. Certain demographic expectations that you don't meet. Naomi felt her stomach drop. You mean she won't approve of me because I'm black? I mean she won't approve of you because you're not from her world. But yes, Naomi, I need to be honest. My mother has some very old-fashioned views about social class and race that I've spent years trying to change. The takeout containers suddenly felt heavy in Naomi's hands. She had known this moment would come eventually, but she had pushed it to the back of her mind. Maybe we should call this off, Ethan, before it gets more complicated. No, Ethan said firmly, moving closer to her on the couch. Naomi, I don't care what my mother thinks. This is my life, my choice, and my happiness. Besides, he added with a slight smile, you're the most accomplished, intelligent, beautiful woman I've ever known. If she can't see that, it's her loss. Despite her anxiety, Naomi felt warmth spread through her chest at his words. But if she figures out this isn't real, then we make sure she doesn't. We've convinced everyone else. We can convince her too. Eleanor Sterling arrived on Friday afternoon, like a force of nature. She was an elegant woman in her early 60s, with silver hair pulled back in a perfect chignon, and the kind of understated, expensive clothing that whispered rather than shouted wealth. But her eyes were sharp and assessing, and Naomi felt like she was being evaluated from the moment they met. So you're the young woman who's captured my son's heart, Eleanor said, extending a perfectly manicured hand. It's wonderful to meet you, Mrs. Sterling, Naomi replied, grateful that her medical training had taught her to remain calm under pressure. The weekend was a series of tests disguised as social activities. Eleanor had arranged lunch at her exclusive country club, where Naomi was, introduced to several of Eleanor's friends as Ethan's doctor fiancé. The questions came fast and pointed. Where had she gone to school? What did her parents do? How had she and Ethan met? Naomi answered honestly, watching Eleanor's expression grow more pinched with each revelation about her foster care background and community clinic work. How admirable, Eleanor said, when Naomi explained her work with underprivileged families. And you plan to continue this charitable work after you're married? It's not charity, Mrs. Sterling, Naomi replied calmly. It's healthcare. And yes, I plan to continue practicing medicine. That evening, as they prepared for dinner at an upscale restaurant Eleanor had chosen, Ethan found Naomi sitting on their bedroom floor, looking overwhelmed. She hates me, Naomi said without preamble. Ethan sat down beside her. She doesn't hate you. She's just protective and set in her ways. Ethan, she asked me if I was marrying you for your money. She actually asked me that. What did you tell her? I told her that if I were after money, I would have chosen someone less stubborn and opinionated. Despite the tension, Ethan laughed. I bet she didn't know what to do with that answer. She didn't. But, Ethan, I can see how much you want her approval, and I can see that my background, my race, my work, it's all wrong in her eyes. Maybe we should... Stop, Ethan interrupted, taking her hands. Naomi, look at me. My mother's approval isn't worth more than your dignity or your happiness. If she can't see how extraordinary you are, that's her failure, not yours. Their eyes met, and Naomi felt that familiar flutter in her chest. You really mean that? I mean every word. And Naomi? Even if this were real, even if we were actually getting married for love, I would still choose you over her approval every single time. The intensity in his voice made Naomi's breath catch. The line between pretense and reality was blurring again, and she found herself leaning slightly closer to him. The moment was interrupted by Eleanor's voice calling from the living room. "Children, we should leave for dinner soon." At the restaurant, Eleanor's interrogation continued, but something had shifted in Ethan. He was more protective of Naomi, more assertive in defending her choices, and more openly affectionate. When Eleanor made a pointed comment about Naomi's unusual background, Ethan reached across the table and took Naomi's hand. "Mother," he said quietly but firmly, "Naomi overcame challenges you can. At Imagine to become one of the most respected doctors in her field. She chose to serve others, instead of pursuing wealth. She's intelligent, compassionate, and she makes me a better person. I would think you'd be proud that I found someone with such character." Eleanor looked taken aback by her son's directness. "Of course, dear. I just want to make sure you've thought this through carefully." "I have," Ethan replied, bringing Naomi's hand to his lips for a gentle kiss. "I've never been more certain of anything in my life." The gesture sent electricity through Naomi's entire body, and she saw something in Ethan's eyes that made her wonder if he was still acting. Later that night, after Eleanor had returned to her hotel, Naomi found Ethan on their apartment's balcony, staring out at the harbor. "You were amazing tonight," she said, joining him at the railing. She was out of line. "I should have stopped her sooner." "Ethan, can I ask you something?" "Always. When you defended me tonight, when you said you'd never been more certain of anything, were you still playing a role?" Ethan turned to face her, and in the moonlight, his expression was completely open. "No, Naomi. I wasn't playing a role. Every word I said to my mother tonight was true. Even the part about me making you a better person, especially that part." He moved closer to her. "Naomi, I know we started this as a business arrangement, but somewhere along the way it stopped being fake for me. I'm falling in love with you, and I hope, you might be feeling something too." Naomi's heart was racing, but she forced herself to think clearly. "Ethan, this is exactly what we agreed wouldn't happen. We said no complications. I know what we said. But feelings don't follow contracts, Naomi. What I feel for you is real, whether it's convenient or not." She looked into his eyes, seeing hope and vulnerability there. "If we cross this line, there's no going back. Everything changes. Maybe it's time for things to change," Ethan said softly, reaching up to cup her face. "Maybe the best things in life are worth the risk." As he leaned down to kiss her, Naomi made a choice that would transform their careful arrangement into something far more dangerous and beautiful than either had ever imagined. The kiss was everything Naomi had imagined and feared it would be. Soft at first, tentative, giving her the chance to pull away. But as she melted into Ethan's arms, the kiss deepened, and with it, the careful walls they had built between them came tumbling down. When they finally broke apart, both were breathless. "Naomi," Ethan whispered, his forehead resting against hers. "I don't," she said softly, placing a finger against his lips. "Don't analyze it or apologize for it. Just let it be what it was." They stood on the balcony for a long time, holding each other and watching the city lights reflect on the water. Neither spoke about what this meant for their arrangement, their timeline, or their carefully planned exit strategy. For this moment, it was enough to simply be together. The next morning brought unexpected complications. Naomi woke to find Ethan already dressed and pacing the living room, his phone pressed to his ear. "Yes, I understand the situation," he was saying, "but surely there must be some mistake. I see. How long do we have to respond?" When he hung up, his expression was grim. "What's wrong?" Naomi asked, still in her pajamas and robe. "That was my lawyer. Someone has leaked information about our arrangement to the media. They claim to have documentation proving our engagement is fake." Naomi felt the blood drain from her face. "What kind of documentation?" "They won't say, but they're threatening to publish the story unless we pay them $2 million by tonight. Blackmail." Naomi sank onto the couch. "Ethan, if this comes out, I know. It would destroy both of our reputations. Your clinic would lose credibility in the community, and my company would face another scandal just when things were stabilizing. Naomi's mind raced. Who could have known? We've been so careful. It had to be someone with access to our legal documents, or someone who was present during our initial negotiations. Ethan stopped pacing and looked at her. Naomi, there's something else. The demand came with a photo. He handed her his phone, and Naomi gasped. The photo showed them on the balcony the night before, kissing, but it was taken from an angle that made it clear they were being watched, and the timestamp showed it was taken just moments after their conversation about their feelings being real. Someone was listening, Naomi whispered. They know everything. Ethan sat beside her, taking her hands. I'm going to handle this. I'll pay the money. No, Naomi said firmly. Ethan, you can't negotiate with blackmailers. They'll just come back for more. Then what do you suggest? Let them publish the story and destroy everything we've built. Naomi was quiet for a long moment, thinking, what if we beat them to it? What do you mean? What if we tell our own story first? Control the narrative instead of letting them control it. Ethan looked at her skeptically. Admit that we entered into a fake engagement? Admit that we entered into an arrangement that became real. Tell the truth, Ethan, that we started as a business partnership, but fell in love along the way. It's not a lie anymore, is it? The question hung in the air between them. Ethan studied her face. Naomi, are you saying? I'm saying that what happened last night changed everything for me too. I'm saying that somewhere between our first dinner and your mother's visit and watching you care for your injured employees, I stopped pretending and started falling in love with you. Ethan's expression transformed, hope replacing worry. But if we admit the arrangement was initially fake, the media will have a field day. They'll question everything about our relationship. Let them question it. The truth is that real love often grows from unexpected beginnings. How many arranged marriages throughout history became love stories? How many business partnerships became personal partnerships? Naomi stood and began pacing, her mind working through the possibilities. We tell the story honestly. We say that we initially came together to solve mutual problems. You needed to restore your reputation. I needed to save my clinic. But in the process of getting to know each other, we discovered something real. And if people don't believe us, then they don't believe us. But Ethan, our friends have seen us together. Your mother saw us together. The way we look at each other, the way we interact, none of that has been fake lately, has it? Ethan shook his head. No, it hasn't. Then we have nothing to hide. We tell our story with pride, not shame. Within 2 hours, they had crafted a press release with the help of Ethan's PR team. The statement was honest and direct. Ethan Sterling and Dr. Naomi Williams had initially entered into an engagement to address business challenges, but their partnership had evolved into genuine love. They were now planning a real wedding and a real future together. The media response was immediate and intense. Some outlets were skeptical, others were charmed by the honesty, and still others focused on the unique nature of their love story. But the blackmail threat had been neutralized. There was no scandal to expose when the truth was already public. That evening, as they watched the news coverage together, Naomi felt Ethan's arms around her and realized that their carefully constructed arrangement had become something she had never expected, a real relationship with a future. Any regrets? Ethan asked, pressing a kiss to the top of her head. Only one, Naomi replied, snuggling closer to him. What's that? I regret that it took us so long to be honest about what we were feeling. The weeks following their public revelation brought unexpected challenges and surprising support. While some media outlets remained skeptical about their story, others embraced the narrative of a business arrangement that had blossomed into real love. More importantly, the people who mattered most in their lives stood by them. Dr. Martinez, Naomi's colleague at the clinic, was the first to call after the news broke. Mija, she said, using the affectionate term she reserved for people she cared about. I don't care how this started. I've seen how that man looks at you when he thinks no one is watching. That's not acting. Ethan's business partner, David Chen, had a similar reaction. Ethan, in 20 years of friendship, I've never seen you as happy as you've been these past few months. Whatever brought you two together, you'd be crazy to let it go. Even Eleanor Sterling, after her initial shock came around. She called Ethan 3 days after the story broke. "I owe your fiancé an apology," she said without preamble. "I was watching the news coverage, and I saw the interview she gave about the clinic. The way she talked about serving others, the passion in her voice. I realized I had been judging her based on my own prejudices rather than seeing her character." The interview Eleanor referenced had been Naomi's idea. Instead of hiding from the media attention, she had invited a camera crew to the clinic to show them her work. The footage of her with patients, explaining the importance of community healthcare, had been powerful and authentic. "She doesn't need your approval, Mother," Ethan had replied. "But I'm glad you're finally seeing what I see. Son, I want you to bring her to Seattle for Thanksgiving. I want to introduce her to the family properly, and I want to do better this time." Now, as Naomi sat in their living room planning their actual wedding, they had decided to go through with a real ceremony. She reflected on how much had changed. What had started as a desperate solution to separate problems had become the foundation for something beautiful. Ethan entered the room carrying 2 cups of coffee and sat beside her on the couch. "How's the planning going?" "Well, your mother has very strong opinions about flowers. My foster sister thinks we should have the ceremony at the clinic, and the wedding planner you hired is convinced we need ice sculptures shaped like stethoscopes." Ethan laughed. "Ice sculptures? Apparently it's a theme wedding. Successful businessman meets dedicated doctor." I told her we're not characters in a romantic comedy. "Although," Ethan said, pulling her closer, "we kind of are, aren't we? Fake engagement becomes real love. It's like something out of a movie." Naomi tilted her head to look at him. "Is that what this is? A romantic comedy?" "No," Ethan said, his voice becoming serious. "This is real life. And real life is messier and more complicated and more beautiful than any movie." He was right about the messy and complicated part. Integrating their lives had required constant negotiation and compromise. Ethan was learning to balance his demanding schedule with Naomi's commitment to her patients. Naomi was adjusting to the public attention that came with being engaged to a prominent CEO. But the beautiful part was undeniable. Ethan had kept his promise about the clinic's endowment, establishing a fund that would ensure its survival and growth for decades to come. He had also surprised Naomi by funding a scholarship program for students from foster care backgrounds who wanted to pursue medical careers. "I know what it's like to feel like you don't have support," he had explained when he told her about the scholarships. "You had to fight for everything you achieved. Maybe we can make it a little easier for others." Naomi had been moved to tears by his thoughtfulness. It was gestures like this that convinced her their love was real, not the public displays or expensive gifts, but the quiet ways Ethan showed he understood and supported what mattered to her. Their wedding was planned for 6 months later, in the spring. They had chosen a small ceremony in the garden of a historic Brooklyn mansion. With the reception held at a community center in Naomi's neighborhood, it was a perfect blend of elegance and accessibility, ensuring that her patients and their families could attend alongside Ethan's business associates. "Are you nervous?" Ethan asked one evening as they reviewed the guest list. "About the wedding?" "No." "About the marriage?" Terrified, Ethan set down the papers and turned to face her. "Talk to me. I've never had a family, Ethan. I don't know how to be a wife, how to build a life with someone. What if I'm terrible at it?" "Naomi, you've spent your entire career taking care of other people. You've built relationships with your patients, your colleagues, your community. You know how to love and support people. That's different. That's professional, is it? The way you talk to Mrs. Rodriguez about her diabetes medication, the patience you show with little Marcus when he's scared of getting a shot, the time you spend with Mr. Thompson even when he's not really sick. That's not just professional. That's love in action." Naomi felt tears prick her eyes. "You really think I can do this? I think you've been doing it your whole life. You just called it something else." 3 months before their wedding, they faced their biggest test yet. An investigative journalist had spent weeks digging into their story and published a detailed article questioning the authenticity of their relationship. The piece was thorough and damaging, suggesting that their entire romance was an elaborate publicity stunt that had gone too far. The article included interviews with unnamed sources claiming to have evidence that Ethan and Naomi were still living in separate bedrooms and maintaining purely professional interactions in private. While the claims were false, they had been sharing a bedroom for 2 months now. The accusations stung. "Maybe we should call off the wedding," Naomi said after reading the article. "The scrutiny is only going to get worse." "Absolutely not," Ethan replied firmly. "Naomi, I love you. Really, truly, completely love you. I don't care what some journalist thinks or what gossips say. I care about building a life with you. But your company, your reputation, will be fine. Do you know what our stock price did this week? It hit an all-time high. Do you know why? Because investors believe in companies with authentic leadership, and authenticity is exactly what you've brought to my life." He took her hands and looked directly into her eyes. "Naomi, I'm going to ask you something, and I want you to be completely honest. Do you love me?" "Yes," she whispered without hesitation. "Do you want to spend your life with me?" "Yes." "Do you trust me to love and support you, even when things get difficult?" "Yes." "Then marry me. Not because of any arrangement or contract or business deal. Marry me because we love each other and because we want to build something beautiful together." As Naomi looked into Ethan's eyes, she realized that their story had never really been about a fake engagement at all. It had been about 2 people finding each other against all odds and choosing to build something real from an impossible beginning. "Okay," she said, smiling through her tears. "Let's get married." The morning of their wedding dawned clear and bright, with the kind of perfect spring weather that seemed too good to be true. Naomi woke up in the bridal suite of the historic mansion, surrounded by her chosen family, Dr. Martinez, her foster sister Jessica, who had flown in from California, and surprisingly, Eleanor Sterling, who had insisted on helping with the final preparations. "You look radiant, dear," Eleanor said as she helped adjust Naomi's veil. The dress was simple but elegant, a flowing ivory gown with delicate lace sleeves that Naomi had chosen because it felt like her, not like someone she was pretending to be. "I never thought I'd be doing this," Naomi admitted, looking at herself in the mirror. "Getting married or getting married to my son?" Eleanor asked with a small smile. "Both, honestly." Eleanor's expression grew serious. "Naomi, I owe you an apology for how I behaved when we first met. I was wrong to judge you based on my own narrow expectations. Watching you and Ethan together these past months, seeing how he's grown as a person because of your influence, I understand now why he loves you so much. Mrs. Sterling." "Eleanor, please. We're going to be family." The words hit Naomi unexpectedly hard. Family. After 28 years of feeling like she didn't belong anywhere, she was about to become part of a family. Meanwhile, in another room, Ethan was dealing with his own pre-wedding nerves. David Chen was helping him with his tie while offering unsolicited advice. "Stop fidgeting," David said. "You've been planning this day for months. What if she changes her mind?" Ethan asked. "What if she decides this is all too complicated, too public, too much?" "Ethan, that woman loves you. I've never seen 2 people more right for each other, even though we started with a fake engagement. Especially because you started with a fake engagement. You 2 had to get to know each other without all the usual romantic illusions. You fell in love with who she really is, and she fell in love with who you really are. That's a stronger foundation than most marriages have." The ceremony was held in the mansion's garden, with white chairs arranged, in a semicircle, around a simple arch covered in spring flowers. The guest list was a unique mix. Ethan's business associates sat beside Naomi's patients, elegant. Society women chatted with families from the clinic, and children played quietly in the back rows. As the string quartet began playing, Naomi walked down the aisle alone, having chosen not to have someone give her away since she belonged to herself. But as she walked toward Ethan, who was waiting at the altar with tears in his eyes, she realized she was walking toward belonging to something larger than herself. Their vows were personal and honest. Ethan spoke about how Naomi had taught him that success meant nothing without purpose. And that love meant choosing someone's happiness over your own comfort. Naomi talked about how Ethan had shown her that taking care of others didn't mean she couldn't let someone take care of her too. When we first met, Naomi said, looking directly into Ethan's eyes, we thought we were solving each other's problems. What we actually did was find each other. You are my partner, my best friend, and my heart's home. When the officiant pronounced them husband and wife, their kiss was met with cheers from their unusual but perfect congregation. The reception was held at the community center, transformed with elegant decorations that managed to be both beautiful and welcoming. Ethan's mother danced with Mr. Thompson, Naomi's elderly patient who had become her unofficial grandfather figure. The children from the neighborhood played with the flower girls, and everyone seemed to be having genuine fun rather than simply fulfilling social obligations. During their first dance, Ethan and Naomi swayed to a jazz version of At Last, and Naomi marveled at how right this felt. Any regrets? Ethan asked, echoing the question he had asked months earlier. Only one, Naomi replied, making him raise an eyebrow in concern. I regret that we didn't meet sooner. I don't, Ethan said, spinning her gently. We met exactly when we were supposed to, when we were ready to appreciate what we found. 2 years later, Dr. Naomi Sterling. She had decided to take Ethan's name, though she kept Williams professionally stood in the newly expanded Sunshine Community Health Clinic, watching her team of 6 doctors and 12 nurses prepare for the day's patients. The clinic now occupied 3 buildings on the block, offering everything, from primary care to mental health services to dental care. Mrs. Sterling called Marcus, the little boy whose asthma she had been treating for 3 years. He was now 10 and had become the clinic's unofficial messenger. Your husband is here. Naomi smiled and walked to the main entrance, where Ethan was waiting with coffee and a familiar expression of patient amusement. He often stopped by the clinic during his lunch breaks, claiming he needed to see his wife, but really just enjoying the energy and purpose of the place. Busy morning? He asked, handing her the coffee. Mrs. Rodriguez's daughter is getting married next month and wants me to be there. Mr. Thompson brought me more cookies than I can possibly eat, and we just got approval for the new pediatric wing. Good problems to have. They walked through the clinic together, Ethan greeting patients and staff by name. His transformation from the cold CEO of media reports to this warm, engaged man never ceased to amaze people who had only known his public persona. Oh, Naomi said as they reached her office. Eleanor called. She wants to know if we've thought any more about her suggestion. Eleanor's suggestion was that they start thinking about children. She had become an unexpectedly devoted mother-in-law, visiting regularly and taking genuine pride in Naomi's work. Her hints about grandchildren had become increasingly unsubtle. Have we thought about it? Ethan asked, settling into the chair across from Naomi's desk. I think about it every day when I see the children here. I think about what it would mean to give a child the family I never had. And what conclusions have you come to? Naomi smiled and pulled out a small wrapped package from her desk drawer. I think you should open this. Ethan's hands shook slightly as he unwrapped the gift. Inside was a small picture frame containing an ultrasound image and a note that read, Sterling Baby and One, arriving November. Ready to be part of our love story. Ethan looked up at Naomi with wonder and joy written across his face. Really? Really? Are you ready to be a father? Ethan stood and came around the desk to pull Naomi into his arms. I'm ready for anything, as long as it's with you. As they held each other in the clinic that had brought them together, surrounded by the sounds of a community they had helped build, Naomi reflected on how their story had unfolded. What had started as a desperate business arrangement had become the greatest love story of her life. They had learned that love doesn't always begin with passion and romance. Sometimes it begins with respect and partnership, growing slowly and surely until it becomes unshakable. They had learned that the best relationships are built on seeing and accepting each other's flaws, not on maintaining perfect facades. Most importantly, they had learned that real love makes both people better, not by trying to change them, but by supporting them in becoming the best versions of themselves. Their story would continue to evolve, filled with the challenges and joys of marriage, parenthood, and building a life together. But the foundation they had built, based on honesty, respect, and genuine partnership, would see them through whatever came next. In the end, their fake engagement had led them to the most real love either had ever known. Thank you for spending this time with me today. If stories like Ethan and Naomi's remind you that love can bloom in the most unexpected places, please subscribe and hit the notification bell. Each subscription enables me to continue finding and sharing these powerful stories, reminders that real love often grows not from passion alone, but from respect, partnership, and choosing each other every day. Until next time, remember that your own love story might begin in the most surprising way, and the most beautiful chapters of your life might still be waiting to be written.